Welcome, everybody, to our 6:30 session for our March 11th meeting. If we can go ahead and get a roll call from our city clerk.
Yelistich,
Present.
Chapman Gomez, Dodge, Hernandez,
Here.
Hurst,
Here.
Montesino,
Here.
Cervantes.
Here. Everyone, please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Now is the time on our agenda set aside for members of the general public to address the council on any item that is not on the council agenda. And you can just approach the podium, state your name for the record.
Chairman, council people, there's a very powerful lobby that interferes in the affairs of the Ambag area, the Monterey Bay area, and they pick and choose local politicians. The background is the TARP and Federal Reserve have pumped out more than $16 trillion to the banks, not to relieve the homeowners or the American people, but the banks themselves. Congress and the Federal Reserve left you and I with the debt. It turns out that Rockefeller's Morgan Chase received over $2 trillion and Rockefeller Citigroup received $2.5 trillion. They got away with this because in anticipation, Rockefeller and Chase originated and funded the largest lobby in America called Common Cause. Here in California, it is called California Forward. They operate a political machine in Monterey Bay headed by Leon Panetta, who was co-chair before he was appointed the head of the Secretary of Defense and later the CIA. They want to control everything, including the election of our sheriff. The machine went to extreme and unusual lengths to prevent the selection of people having a choice for this particular office. They coordinated a musical chair routine that uses both deceit to assure that the bad policies, curbing civil rights and setting up a neighborhood spy system tied to Homeland Security is expanded. It's not a neighborhood watch program, but it's a government intrusive program. The so-called surprise resignation, as reported by the press last week, was no surprise whatsoever. The fix was already in. The candidate had a website that was set up with endorsements from the political machine. There was stealth and conspiracy to prevent the people from having a choice. They truncated the amount of time for candidates to run for this particular office. The deceit is further indicated that the sheriff that put up the website started erasing inquiries from people. There was nothing pornography, there was no pornography or bad language or anything. But after that, they even got more sophisticated with their skullduggery. A person would go online and they'd see their blog and they would think it was up there for everybody else to see, but they were the only ones that could see it. So this new sheriff that's playing musical chairs with the last one has gone to such extreme lengths to really practice deceit on the people that he plans to represent. What's really being manipulated here is it's a Tammany Hall-like situation. The machine includes the Panetta family, apparatchiks that worked for Common Cause or California Forward, Fred Keeley, Bruce McPherson. We have 4 members of the Board of Supervisors, again, participated in this plan to cheat the people out of having a free and fair election. And what's been happening in both the city and county of Santa Cruz is they've been continually harmonizing laws in preparation for a North American Union, and I encourage you to go to newsexpose.org to get further information on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Rhea D. Hart, District 7. Good evening, members of the council and staff. It's this time of the year where we used to talk about the Arab Spring, but what we're coming into is the election spring. And so we're looking at elections, we're looking at the primary election in June. We have 3 ballots, 3 initiatives that will be on that ballot. You also have a sales tax that will be on that ballot. And we're seeing candidate races. So it's the election spring that we have coming down, which is really very exciting to see all of the candidates filing and to see all the usual meetings that you have to have and agendas trying to figure out how to fill out that June ballot. So remember our 3 initiatives on mayor, on vacancies, and on naming of public places. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to address us on any items not on our agenda?
Christopher Lang, All Points, Watsonville. The most important issue that I've seen going on, other than the violence thing here in Watsonville, is the substance abuse issue. And I see the youth screaming for some valid information. What I'm talking about here is I don't see a person in here that doesn't abuse substances to a point of endangering their health. And most of them aren't even slightly aware of it. And the main place that it's coming from is the food industry and the media. They're just flat out buffalo chipping people into addictions. An example would be coffee. Now, anybody that can get their money up on the counter can buy coffee, no matter how old they are, how much schooling they have. Anybody can buy it. You can buy it with food stamps. It's not a food, it's a drug. The most dangerous drug in the Western world is white refined sugar. Why is it so dangerous? Because of its taste. Almost all the other narcotics are bitter, you know, they give you at least that warning. Now, it used to be you had to go to a pharmacy to get it, and you had to have a prescription to get white refined sugar. In the sugar industry, and a couple of politicians got together and changed it from a drug to a food. Now people are giving it to their little kids. By the time they're born, they're straight up addicted to it. It's a narcotic. We've got to stop it. You know, give the kids valid information. They'll make the right choices if they have the right information. But if they don't have the right information, they don't have a prayer. Once again, you know, you guys have my information. You can get a hold of me. I'll do any part of it you want. No job is too big or too small. You know, any part of it you want. But it's a team effort. I can't do it by myself. Same thing with the violence. You know, it's coming from the whole community. Is putting that violence into the young people's heads, and they're living that way. They think they have to have this information to survive. Well, it used to be there was a fight for survival. Now we got to quit fighting to survive. And we can start anytime. Call or write. I'd be glad to help any way I can.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Lang. Any other members of the public wishing to address us on any item that is not on our agenda?
Hello, Marilyn Garrett, and thank you for your comments, the previous gentleman. We live in a very violent society, unfortunately, and it's all pervasive from the movies the kids are watching, the militarism. It's no wonder. And here's another aspect of violence that we don't think much about. This morning, I was at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and they had final adoption of an ordinance to mandate microchipping of cats and dogs. Now, what's the problem with this? There's a group called chipmenot.org, and they have a registry on adverse reactions to these radio frequency ID chips that are put into pets to help find lost pets. However, it is found that cancer develops around the site. And even the Federal Drug Administration identified risks as adverse tissue reaction, migration of the implanted transponder, compromised information security, failure of the implanted transponder, failure of the inserter, failure of electronic scanner. In fact, here's a picture of a dog where the microchip was not detected. The dog's name was Haddon, and the dog was euthanized. 30 minutes later, the owners called to see where the dog was. Different scanners for different chips. It's not foolproof at all. And they're MRI incompatible. Here's a horse, Lady Santana, pain and nerve damage after the microchip was inserted and has permanent neurological damage. Halo, cancer at the injection site. Makes me want to cry. Here's Vulcan, cancer at the implant, had chemotherapy, radiation, and there's a lawsuit. The Animal Services group will be coming here too, and I urge you to look into the facts, not make this mandatory. It should be voluntary. If people want to do this to their pet, I feel sorry for the pet. And I'll give you some information I'll pass around on this. The vote today was 4-1 in favor, even though about 12 people, including someone from, what's it called, the PER group, you know, where they adopt pets, was against it for financial reasons. And the lone vote, I felt, to protect cats and dogs and to not harm them and to make it voluntary so we don't have police state stuff, was former city council member Greg Caput, who is now the representative on the Board of Supervisors for your area. He's my favorite one on the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for your
very
comments.
much.
Any other public comments wishing to address us on issues not on our agenda? Seeing none, I will close public comment and return us to oral communications from the City Council. Councilmember Bilicic.
I just wanted to remind everybody that next Tuesday night, March 18th at 7 o'clock, we have the Zone 7 Flood Board meeting right here in this room, and I'm hoping that people from Watsonville will come and attend the meeting. There was a lot of, it was a challenge to have the meetings moved to Watsonville. And one of the reasons was that they said it won't make any difference. People won't come here any more than they will come to Santa Cruz. And we advocated and said, no, we think our residents are very concerned. So I'm hoping that we'll have a good showing next week. I think it's important that we show people this is our levy and it's in our city, so hopefully we'll have people attend the meeting. And the other thing is I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Randy Scheckman, and he gave a talk on your future in science. And students were really excited about learning. And he went through public education, and I wouldn't be surprised if someday he ends up with a discovery for diabetes. He really has a lot of knowledge, and he's done a lot of things, and it's really nice to see that, he's the brother of Murray Scheckman, who's the assistant superintendent in the school district, but they showed pictures of him getting his award in Sweden, and I think, it's really nice to have someone of that caliber come to our community and speak to our students. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Thank you. I have a few comments for you. The first is I always try and bring up something about the economy or jobs creation or some way of working and developing that. So what I want to do is let people know, to encourage them that are looking for some work. The city of Watsonville does have some openings. Looks like there's some replacement positions. This is also encouraging for some of the students, maybe at Cabrillo College. It's also an encouragement, too, to keep some of our folks here in the community, be able to work in our community as well. So please take a look at the website, Lab Tech. There's intern positions, but I do encourage people that are in our community to try and find something that is employable opportunities here. I have a few dates that I'd like to bring up. The Freedom Rotary Foundation will be having their casino night, 30th year, for their anniversary. It will be this Saturday at the fairgrounds. Tickets now are $40, and hopefully we'll have that. The proceeds go back to our community here. There will be a discussion on the 20th of March for the police and the fire chief conducting a community outreach meeting to talk a little bit more in the public about the public safety initiative. So for those of you that may have an interest, it's 6 o'clock at the Methodist Church on Stanford next Thursday. I have a date, March 26th, where we have, I have a Skilquin Barbecue, which is another fundraiser for our community, for the youth, and scholarships for some of our youth. The 29th of April, Methodist Church on Stanford, we're going to have a County Board of Supervisors candidate forum. And I'd like to finish off with an acknowledgement, and I really hope that somebody can share this with Miles Ryder from Driscoll's as well as the staff. I did go to a reception in his honor on Thursday last week at the Natividad Medical Center, the new facility, and I just want to read this comment for him, for his staff, and I would appreciate, hopefully somebody listening will be able to forward this message for me. I took the time to attend the Hero Award at Natividad Hospital on the 6th of March to honor Mr. Ryder and his team at Driscoll's for their philanthropic efforts, creativity, ingenuity, and dedication that they came up with to address the cultural communication gap we face with members of our indigenous communities that migrate to our area and provide much of the hard labor our fields need. Through the Agricultural Leadership Council, they had the ability to raise the funds and awareness for a project to address this communication gap. In doing so, this team effort was able to secure funding for supporting a special program called Indigenous Interpretation Plus that offers translation services for medical care in Natividad Hospital to assist many communications and cultural barriers the indigenous members of our community face while needing medical attention. Congratulations, and thank you again for all your support and efforts that you were honored for this past week for the Hero Award. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you very much. Last week was a busy week with an AMBAG meeting right here in our community room where they took input regarding transportation, housing, and all the other things that AMBAG oversees. And then there was the RTC meeting in Santa Cruz at the county chamber. Thank you, former Mayor Eduardo, for leading the RTC and bringing real transit resources to our community, and we certainly appreciate Councilmember Dodge's participation there as well. Saturday was the employees awards and retirement dinner. We have 8 retirees. Leslie Holloway Pound, David Kikuchi, Peter Canego, Bonnie Lott, Ed Mitchell, Fausto Romero, and Skip Prigg, and Jesse Velasquez, utility worker, all long-term employees, real assets that will be hard to replace if we can find the resources to replace them. It is spring, as Rhea mentioned, and another paradise day today, just a beautiful weather-wise, but it's not beautiful for everybody out there. In Saturday's paper, you might have noticed that unemployment in Watson and in Santa Cruz County has declined, but there are still 16,400 unemployed in the county. But the remarkable part about it, and I quote the Sentinel, is that of that number, 4,500 are in Watsonville and 1,500 are in the neighborhood of Interlaken and Freedom. And so that's 6,900 people that are that we know of that are registered, that are unemployed in our community. And of course, there's many, many more that aren't on the EDD's website or list. Many of those are veterans. Many of them are young people that are trying to find a job, but there's no openings and no hirings. And I'm certainly glad the city has some openings, and I wish we had more. We have a need for more, certainly, but there again, resources are in the way. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hernandez?
I just wanted to mention to everyone that we're going to be having the Cesar Chavez Community Awards, Youth Awards, on Thursday, March 20th. I think there's there might be some of these flyers around different areas in the city, but it's going to be March 20th at 7 o'clock. It's a Thursday here at the Civic Room right next door, the Civic Plaza. So if you can make it, some of the youth that have been doing exemplary things here in the community. So it's a good time to come and support our local youth. And that's pretty much all I got.
Great. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone that came out to the Watsonville Forward event at the Appleton Grill on March 6th. The event's main purpose was to celebrate and welcome the Watsonville Film Festival in its 4th year here in our community, as well as thank the Pajaro Valley Chamber of Commerce for also partnering with the film festival and helping to kick off the event as well. And I just really wanted to highlight that the film festival is an example of a great partnership along with the city, as well as promoting the love of art through film. They are also, as well, advertising our downtown businesses, our downtown restaurants, the map that we introduced here at a council meeting showcasing the various downtown restaurants. They are also featuring throughout the festival, available to all the folks coming through in places where they can dine and enjoy the city of Watsonville. As well as the film festival is also celebrating International Women's Day, which usually takes place on March 8th. That's the actual date for International Women's Day. But they are featuring women filmmakers that are going to be featured and showcasing their films at the film festival. They'll be hosting a brunch at the YWCA from 11 to 2 p.m. on Saturday morning. And so that'll be also a great opportunity to also celebrate women in the arts and also in film as well. So I just wanted to announce that that's coming. It's starting up March 14th through the 16th at our very own Mello Center.
Get tickets for that.
The tickets are available for purchase online, and you can also go to the ticket window at the Mello Center. And you can visit, for further information, the full schedule, watsonvillefilmfestival.org.
Second Street Cafe.
And Second Street Cafe is also selling tickets. Seeing no other oral communications from council members, we'll go ahead and have a report out of closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council considered one item in closed session, the City of Watsonville versus California Department of Finance case. It's identified in the closed session agenda. Discussed the same and voted 6-0 with one absent to appeal the decision of the Sacramento County Superior Court. That concludes my report.
Thank you for your report. Our next item on the agenda includes a presentation of the Pájaro River and Corralitos Sal Si Puedes levees improvements.
The Pájaro River levee has been known to turn from a nearly invisible neighbor, a dry river bottom for many months of the year, into a threatening monster. Several times, and most notably in 1955 and again in 1995, when the antiquated river levee system failed to contain a Pájaro River swollen with rain runoff.
Floodwaters washed out bridges, flushed sewage into homes, left thousands of people homeless, many jobs.
This man was one of 2 persons to die as a result of the flooding.
Those in low-lying areas say it's time the county maps out a detailed flood plan or a levee plan to make sure this kind of disaster doesn't happen again.
It was $100 million in damages, $60 million in the urban community and about $30 million in the agricultural community. It's still fresh in everybody's minds. You know, that damage.
When heavy rains come to Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties, the water flows and grows for up to 13 hours before reaching Watsonville and the river mouth.
We're the bottom 11 miles linear on a watershed that is over 1,500 square miles.
That force of nature is crucial to the survival of rich adjacent ag lands. But flooding the banks destroys production here, and the growing next-door neighborhoods, and those along the main local tributary, the Sal Si Puedes Creek.
It's not just Pájaro Valley and our food, it's the world. Food goes everywhere, and so if you flood that prime land, what happens to the production? It has a devastating effect worldwide.
The 95 flood shut down these fields for multiple seasons, causing layoffs and lost crop profits. And Monterey and Santa Cruz counties shared in paying a $50 million lawsuit settlement due to the levee's failure.
Every time it starts raining hard for multiple days, I'm basically waiting for a catastrophic failure of the levee that could, in one fell swoop, wipe me off this landscape.
Eugene is a flower grower. His greenhouses are located literally on the levee bank. He survived the 1995 flood, but has spent the last 18 years fearing another.
Basically, everything that got wet died or became so weak and disease-ridden it had to be replaced. The secondary damage to that is the business we're in is where we provide a steady source of product to a consumer base. Obviously, we couldn't produce that steady stream, so we lost a lot of customers during that time, and it almost took us out.
That's why the Pájaro River Bench Project is so important and so welcome. The $7.6 million in grant money to pay for the project is allowing for thousands of truckloads of earth to be moved. Dirt that has long stayed in place while a huge $200+ million Army Corps of Engineers project has stalled at the federal level.
We took it back from the Corps. We got it back, I think, in August or October 2010. And we had, within a year, we had our permits. And within 2 years, we were under construction.
This map gives an overview of the areas along the Pájaro River being widened and graded to create a bench or extra level along the bank. Key points along the river to distribute heavy flows and relief from pressure during any rainy season or event. The smaller levee system along the Sal Si Puedes Creek that feeds into the Pájaro River is also being shored up and strengthened as part of the project.
The county and the city, and Monterey County too, work together to make something happen on the Pájaro River. And it's just refreshing to see local people take over and do something and make it happen.
The state money paying for the bench project is not just relief to the stressed levee, but to the local communities that would be hard-pressed to pay for it, despite the extreme need. In 2012 and 2013, all summer long, trucks moved an average of 4,800 cubic yards, for a total of 245,000 cubic yards, creating a natural bench of the bank to give high waters elbow room, reducing stress on the banks and the natural ecosystem here, including steelhead. Root balls are being shown here being placed in stream to serve as fish resting areas.
By excavating down to the 2-year flood surface, we are allowing the low flow channel to get out of its banks and operate on a floodplain within the existing levee system. So that when we're talking anadromous fisheries, if we have steelhead coming upstream or going downstream and they're met with difficult stream velocities, then they get up in the out-of-bank areas where the benches are carved and the velocities are slower, and they find resting areas there when it's really ripping down through the channel.
In something of a win-win-win, Santa Cruz Public Works and the Pajaro Valley community have been able to find a benefactor. About a third of this earth hauled out of the riverbed, 75,000 cubic yards worth, has been placed at the neighboring Elkhorn Slough National Marine Estuary. Dirt is being used to raise the elevation of the marshes in order to restore them to their original, properly functioning, more shallow depth.
The thing about the marshes here, and really these coastal marshes up and down California, they're incredibly productive and rich. So a lot of the migratory birds that are moving through will benefit from the production that these marshes produce. One of the interesting spins here in Elkhorn Slough is that the area that we're looking at repairing is adjoining a section of healthy marsh that has been colonized by sea otters. And so these animals, the otters, are now using this healthy marsh as a pupping ground and a feeding ground. So we anticipate that as we bring back 100 acres more marsh, that it will be beneficial to animals like the sea otters. So when we found out that it was going to work, that all the forces lined up and the permits lined up, it was a great day. And we're real pleased to see this moving forward.
Watching these trucks by the dozens and loads by the thousands underway may not appear very environmentally sensitive, but in fact, the Regional Air Quality Control Board modified the hauling schedule to limit dust pollution. The project waited for nesting hawks to fledge before embarking. And even the native western pond turtles were tracked using radio equipment in order to protect them from truck traffic. Watsonville area residents and those on the Monterey County side of the river share in the satisfaction of finally getting a new lease on life for the levee that's too often gotten attention in the most destructive way.
Like all water projects in California, there are kind of 3 communities of interest. There's agriculture, there's environmental, there's residential. This is one of those feel-good projects where all 3 communities come together to support it. The ag people like this project because it's additional flood conveyance and less risk on their fields of overtopping and inundation in that area with all the food safety concerns. The environmental people, they like it because of all the improvements to the natural river system that are going to take place here with vegetation and wildlife and floodplain functions inside an existing levee system. And the residential people like it because it gets them protection. They sleep better at night knowing that there is a greater conveyance ability for the river to move the water through this system without the same risk we had before this project.
For me, this is starting my 16th year as a supervisor representing North Monterey County. And this project has been a major project on my agenda for the last 16 years. And for having it finally come to an end and finally having it completed is one of the major cornerstones of my 16 years as being supervisor for Monterey County. The people that don't get flooded will never realize that they're not getting flooded because this project was done. It's a great success, and I'm very proud to be a part of it.
It's not the end all, but it is a start, and I really commend the county and the city working together, but particularly the county working on this project, making it happen.
Excellent. There's applause from the audience. Any comments you'd like to make before moving on to our consent agenda? Councilmember Hurst?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as it was said, this is not the end-all or be-all. It is a good start, and it is added protection, but I don't want the residents to fall into a sense of false security over the progress that's been made. We may have dodged the bullet this year on flooding. One never knows when it'll occur, but clearly into the future, many residents still and will remain in the 100-year flood zone at risk, and even more are in the 50-year flood zone at risk as well. And so we must continue to try and bring whatever level of protection that we can generate from cooperative agreements with Monterey County and Santa Cruz County and the taxpayers of Watsonville to try and avoid the devastation of the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bilicic?
As was stated in the film, this is just the beginning, and it's phase 1, and we still have other phases that will occur in the summer. So, Steve, is this phase 1 or phase 1 and 2? But it's really, we had phase 1, and then they started working on the South Sepulvedas Creek. So, go ahead and...
Oh, great. Good evening, Council. So this video represented the work of the bench excavation project that was done on phases 1 and 2 of the river levee itself. There's still another phase that's going to be done. So what they also did this past summer was go and add additional soil and elevation to the creek's levees to restore their elevation to the original elevation that they were built to. They had sunk a couple of feet over the years since it is
South Sepulvedas Creek.
South Sepulvedas
Right.
and Corralitos Creek. So this summer, the county is planning to do that same type of levee crest elevation restoration work on the Pajaro River part of the project. So they're going to be raising the levee a little bit to the original elevation to provide some additional flood protection for our community. It's significant and good work, so we're very proud of the county for moving that forward.
And the fact that it's not finished, I mean, we're still waiting for the federal program, but the county and both counties, Monterey and Santa Cruz, plus the city, got involved to try to have something happen. And I think that everyone that was involved should be commended for the progress that's been made. But as Councilman Hurst said, it's not over, and we need more protection, and that's why we continue to work with Congressman Sam Farr. Thank you.
Yes, and one other item, one of the most challenging parts of the larger Army Corps project is securing federal funding. So something that went out in everybody's utility bill this month was letters to Senators Boxer and Feinstein requesting that they support funding for this project. And I wanted to remind the community that it's really important that everybody sign those and mail those in to our senators. It really will make a difference for them to hear from our community to support federal funding for the larger Army Corps project. The letter also addressed changes to the FEMA flood insurance program and some challenges we're having on that front. So it was a dual purpose letter, very important, and if we could get our participation from the community, I think that would really make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
I'd also like to make the comment, too, that we have a value of what a 100-year flood has done in our community in terms of $100 million worth of damages here. FEMA should be able to do the math on something like that to determine, or to be able to use in some of their theory to calculate FEMA policies that are equitable to our community. And I'm really hoping that the communication that does open up over that whole process will take this into consideration, especially all of the money that we are being proactively obtaining to go ahead and do these capital improvements for our community base. So again, I will support you in reminding people, get those letters out to the congressmen and the senators. I'm really encouraging you to be a voice in the community here. It's affecting all of us. And the more that we tell them how much of an issue this is, I think the better our response will be for them in working through this with us.
Thank you. So moving on down our agenda, we've reached item 4.0, which is our consent agenda. All items appearing on the consent agenda are recommended actions, which are considered to be routine and will be acted upon as one consensus motion. There is the opportunity for public comment before approval of our consent agenda if there's anybody here wishing to speak on an item listed on our consent agenda. Seeing no public comment, I'll go ahead and return us to our consideration for moving forward our consent agenda. Councilmember Montesino?
I'd like to move consent agenda.
I'll second that.
So there's been a motion introduced by Councilmember Montesino and a second by Councilmember Hurst. Councilmember Bilicic?
I just wanted to point out that we're continuing with this citywide fiber optic project, which I think is really great. There's another award for a bid to continue, and I think that's really great. And then we also have something happening positive at Pinot Lake, and there's a grant to try and take care of the toxic algic blooms there and removing carp. So another positive thing. And then on 4.6, I see that we have these two council members going to the Iwani for the conference. Is there, today there was another thing sent in, is there a reason why you're not traveling together to cut costs or expenditures, or taking a city vehicle, or what's the story there?
The only note I'll make about 4.6 is that there was a change to reflect the most current cost for the travel, which is a difference of $205.66, and that's what's been updated in the documentation that's included in the packet and online as well.
In the packet, they didn't have mileage costs, and now they have both individual mileage costs. So I was just wondering if they were, I mean, I don't know, is there a reason that you don't utilize a city vehicle or going together to the same location? I don't know.
When I looked into taking the city vehicle, there was only one city, and we didn't know what the weather was going to be at that advanced level. There was only one vehicle with chains that would fit the tires, and it was already reserved. And so, you know, I determined to take my own private car.
And just for scheduling purposes, because I got to leave in later than he did.
Okay. I just was curious, and as long as there's money in your budget, I guess you're good to go.
We think it's an important training opportunity, certainly, and we'll be glad to give a complete report, as has been previously done with all these training opportunities.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I had a question about the 4.4 resolution with regards to the grant. Could we have an idea of the duration that this grant is going to go for? Is it a one-time? Is it a 1 year? What is the length of time that this is a process that we're using this grant fund for the CARP?
Yes, it is just a one-time grant funding. I think the project itself is just going to last a couple of months.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Hurst?
Just a quick comment on 4.3, the fiber optic project. I think this is a real economic stimulator to the community, and this will provide access and high-speed internet connectivity that we didn't have before. And so this is a boon to businesses, to hopefully residents, and certainly municipal services. It's also great to get this grant to do some carp removal at Pinto Lake, and so we're thankful to the State Coastal Conservancy for their grant of $11,700 for carp removal. That's a hard one to get, is a grant for carp removal. And lastly, item 4.5, the support for Assemblyman Stone environmental education and recreation program. This is another important issue in our community, to bring environmental education to more students, to more families, and more awareness to our community about the environment and the great things that students can learn. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote for our consent agenda.
Bielisich?
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes.
Montesino?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Yes. And our consent agenda moves forward unanimously. So next, we'll go ahead and move on to our public hearings. So we do have item 6.1, which is the consideration of an ordinance amending section 6-7.101 regarding our redefining of reusable bag.
Good evening, excuse me, evening Mayor Cervantes and City Council members. This is an introduction of a new ordinance that would amend Chapter 6-7 and 2 sections of it. And specifically, we would be amending Section 101E to change the definition of non-woven plastic reusable bags to those of a thickness of 4 mils or greater, and Section 102D to require stores to provide either paper or reusable bags at no charge to customers using government assistance programs. So this evening, I'm going to give a brief review of recent actions related to the plastic bag ban, talk about concerns that were expressed by the California Grocery Association, and talk about the specifics to the 2 amendments, and in particular, a second amendment that was not included the last time that we talked about this in February. So just a reminder, why do we restrict plastic bags? They create a hazard to wildlife in the wetlands or the ocean. They cause blight when they become litter in our neighborhoods, and there are costs associated with street sweeping and litter removal throughout our community, and they're made of a non-renewable resource. In June of 2012, City Council passed the first plastic bag ban with the stated intent to reduce single-use plastic carryout bags and to encourage the use of reusable bags. The existing ordinance started with a 10-cent fee required for the sale of a paper bag at the checkout stand, and that fee increased in September of 2013 to 25 cents. So single-use plastic bags were prohibited and paper bags were allowed at those fees. The existing ordinance defines reusable bags as those that made from cloth, other woven material, or 2.25 mils thick of plastic. And the existing ordinance allows stores to give away free reusable bags for limited special promotional periods. Where we ran into a problem was that some stores are selling at the checkout stand the 2.25 mil plastic bag for 25 cents or giving them away for free, and this practice is interfering with the transition that we were hoping for to the behavior of bringing bags back to the store for reuse. These 2.25 mil bags appear to not trigger the reuse message in shoppers. Shoppers are not observed bringing them back to the store in significant numbers. The practice is not compatible with the intent of Chapter 6-7 to eliminate single-use plastic bags and encourage reuse. As a result, more, not less plastic is being used, and the practice of single-use shopping bags continues. So the proposed amendment would simply change the definition from 2.25 mils thickness to 4 mils. And as I showed you last month, the 4 mil bag is quite a substantial bag. It does not look like a throwaway product. And I have a sample here if you'd like to see it. The goal of the new definition would be that the 4 mil bag is going to cost more than 25 cents, most likely, and customers who purchase that bag are going to have a monetary incentive to bring them back. And as I mentioned, they are thicker and they look like a durable product, not a throwaway item. In February, our proposed amendment also included a requirement for 25% post-consumer recycled content in reusable bags. And based on feedback we received from the California Grocery Association, we decided that we could live without this requirement at this time, and that it would increase costs and limit the availability and the choices of bags available at this point. And the market is changing really rapidly with plastics, and it's possible that the reusable, the post-consumer recycled content will find its way into the bags, or future changes could be made in this area. A second amendment is proposed tonight. Currently, shoppers who use WIC or food stamps or other government assistance programs are exempt from paying the bag fees. And in the proposed amendment to 6-7102D, it would require stores to provide paper or reusable bags to those customers instead of giving them a plastic bag. And that way, all customers would have the same options. So the anticipated impact of the two proposed amendments are that any non-woven reusable plastic bags given or sold will be 4 mils or greater thickness, and that customers using government assistance programs will receive free of charge a 4 mil or greater plastic bag or other cloth or woven bag. So the staff recommendation is to make those two changes. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood, for your report. Is there any questions from City Council members? Councilmember Bilicic?
I noticed that you now have the bags, I guess it's the paper bags that will be free for some individuals.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
Well, that's actually already in the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. But now that we've had the ordinance in effect for a while, has there been any consideration for senior citizens?
No, there hasn't.
Because I hear from many senior citizens that they forget. And they get into the store and they need paper bags and they don't remember their bags. And the frustration of, oh, I forgot my bag, and it's just difficult. I mean, it looks like we are supporting some, but not others that have difficulties too. And I'm not saying all senior citizens have difficulties, but many of them have talked to me and said, you know, I need a bag. I forget. And so I just wondered if there was any consideration for the senior community.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Well, I think the public assistance includes a wide spectrum of ages and all ages.
That's correct.
Right, so it's not excluding the senior community.
But I had a question to go there, because I'm of the other extreme, that we shouldn't be exempting anyone, because they're already getting subsidized. It doesn't cost a lot to bring your own bags. Everybody, they've been giving free bags, and all these processes. We shouldn't be exempting anyone. Everyone should pay their fair share. I'm of that realm, so just want to put that out there. Go for a motion.
Questions?
Sure, I have
Mhm.
some more questions for you.
Or comments, fine.
One of the questions I've had is I understand that a lot of these revisions are based on the letter that we did receive from the Grocers Union representative. So you've made some modifications based on that. And I don't think thickness was the issue because they were talking about being able to do the walk back and forth for so many times for it to be considered reusable. My concern still comes to the cost, because have they told you what a financial impact it might be for them to give this at 25 cents? Because I don't believe that this is what the cost of selling a 4 milliliter bag is going to be. And that's going to put us back into paper bag situation based on the cost factor, I believe.
Okay, so the ordinance does not require the stores to provide any reusable bags. So that is an option that some stores have chosen, but there's nothing that requires that. The only thing that they're required to do is if they sell a paper bag, that they sell it for 25 cents. So if a store chooses to sell a 4 mil bag, they could sell it at cost, and then the customer, the ideal scenario would be the customer would buy several and then use them over and over again. But it doesn't impact the store. They're not going to lose money on it.
So there's not a financial impact of the store for them to have it because they're really not going to be selling it for 25 cents to begin with,
Right.
which is then putting us back in a position that if affordability is an issue for people to buy those instead of getting them free, we're back to paper bags essentially, which is already 100% biodegradable and made of recycled materials, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And this bag right here is a reusable bag that would meet our new requirements. It's a woven bag, and it was 68 cents at Mi Pueblo. And it's a solid, sturdy bag that I believe signals reuse.
Good.
Okay. So it's not very expensive.
I think you've addressed all the questions in combination of everything we've gone back and forth with here that I had available on this. I'm not much for the cost, but we have biodegradable. We're just now all having to pay out the money on it instead of the stores at this point. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hurst?
Perhaps staff can remind the public of why the folks on the WIC program, the Food Program for Women, Infants, and Children, and the State Department of Social Services Food Stamp Program, and the other subsidized purchase programs for low-income residents. Give us the history on how that evolved.
Okay. During the development of the original ordinance, we looked at our neighboring jurisdictions, the county and the cities, and we wanted to, and we did succeed in having identical ordinances to make it easier for the stores to comply. And the general thinking at that time was that this was a new requirement, and that that the individuals using those programs were potentially didn't have any actual cash resources, and so they were exempted to make sure that this didn't interfere with their the transition from the old way, which was everybody got free bags, to the new way, which was we're supposed to be remembering them. So it was a concern there. Some cities are questioning and changing that now that they've had more experience implementing these ordinances.
And is that the same case with the 25-cent charge for the paper bag, consistency with other agencies, or is there some court requirement of that?
I've been told by the grocery industry representative that stores are required to provide a bag, and the 25-cent paper bag meets that. I'd need to actually do some more verification on that to make sure that's current.
Well, I do think it's important that we have some kind of consistency with neighboring jurisdictions, particularly in the Freedom area, where you have the county on one side of the street and the city on the other side of the street, and I don't know what they do in Pajaro, but you know, it's going to be a trend throughout the state, and maybe we're far out in front of it or right at the point of the spear, but it's the right environmental thing to do. I'm not sure about all the processes and procedures, but somebody has to lead the way on getting all that plastic single-use bag stuff out of the environment.
I can help put us in perspective. Our ordinance up until this point is identical to our neighbors. So everyone's paying 25 cents in Santa Cruz, Capitola, and the unincorporated county. So if we go forward today with the 4 mil requirement, we'll be the first in our area in this attempt to overcome what some people feel like is an end run around our ordinance. So we would be in the lead on that issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Will there be further evaluation just to see how successful this runs, rather than seeing if we just see more paper bags out there instead of on the alternative of what we're trying to encourage? The overall outcome is get the recyclable ones in use, circulated, get everybody up to speed on that, because Councilman Bilicic is correct. There's a lot of memory process that goes on, and to repeat it a few times over for you to remember to bring that recycled one. I just want to make sure that we have a cost issue that we don't have to worry about, that we all end up going back over to paper bags, and instead of it being a free, which it had been before, it's still recyclable, so we know it's go green, but now everybody's having to pay for that. I don't know that I don't see the trend going that people are going to purchase the bags that are thicker. I think we're just going to see more paper bags being used and sold. And that's my opinion. I just want to see if we're going to evaluate that process to see how it's working.
Yes, I think evaluation would be an excellent idea, and we could report back to you in 6 months or a year. The other thing that we could do is increase our outreach, as we did in the beginning of the ordinance, where our staff, our environmental education staff, was in front of the stores. Some of our council members joined us, and we talked to people. We gave out the city's bag, and it sounds like we could use some more of that
promotion
to help people make that shift.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hernandez.
It's not really a question, but I think that one day that was really successful was Kids Day, and that's coming up soon.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I've seen a lot of people carrying the bags after that day, and went to the stores, and I'd see the green bags everywhere from Kids Day. It's also Environmental Day too, so it's a good event to pass those bags out. I've seen some cities that are doing they're doing bags, but they're also getting more people involved in the process by doing like a art design, like putting it out to the community to put a design on the bags that are going to be distributed by the cities. I know San Francisco's doing it, I think, and some other places. That'd be a good idea to get more involvement, more engagement from the community as well, to the 4 millimeter bags. So I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so this is the opportunity for any members of the public wishing to address us on this issue. Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Dobie Jenkins at 35 Loma Prieta Avenue in Freedom, what we call the Northwest Empire, the Northwest frontier of Watsonville. I'm here to speak enthusiastically in favor of your amended motion, your amended ordinance tonight. And one of the best illustrations of why the 4 millimeter bag is necessary is that up on the screen. The 2.5 milliliter will not open up that way. So when people have it at home, It's a flat, small bag that will not open the way a standard paper grocery bag will. So that's another reason that you want to have at least that thickness of a bag, besides its durability. If anybody needs some graphic illustration of the eyesore and rubbish caused by plastic bags, I would invite them to go to Harkins Slough Road off of Buena Vista Road, and that's beside the county landfill area. You will see a fence there, and it has thousands of plastic bags blown up against the fence by wind. Now, those bags are historic. That is, the county doesn't allow them anymore. But they're there, and it's interesting that the county hasn't cleaned them up, maybe as an illustration or a lesson to all of us who go along there, and birders like to go along that because it's a great birding area. Those bags are really an eyesore. Now, here in the city, the Public Works and Parks and Community Service employees do a heroic job cleaning up refuse. And I'm sure that this new ordinance, as it exists now and will in the future, has reduced the amount of rubbish that they have to clean up every year. And I think that this cost of picking up rubbish and these plastic bags in particular is hundreds and thousands of dollars a year. So there's been some reduction in that. But I'd love to have you go along Harkins Slough off of Buena Vista, and you can see what a disaster, environmental and scenic disaster it is in that area. Finally, yes, as we get along in age, many of us do have some timers. We don't have Alzheimer's, but we have some timers, and we forget those bags. But if you go into the market and pay a quarter, you're often going to turn around and go back and get your bag. And so I think it is quite an incentive. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Brad Hunt from Save Our Shores. We're here to also enthusiastically support your amendment to the reusable bag ordinance. 4.0 is leading the way in the next standard of plastic bag use. This is an example of 4.0. Unfortunately, the Grocers Association got to you before because Whole Foods' bag is 80% post-consumer waste to produce this bag. So by doing 25%, you would have definitely been leading the way on changing people's behavior on our bag usage. So we greatly appreciate you implementing the 4.0 this evening. I would also like to say that down the road, there's a possibility that a state bill is going to pass, and the grocers will have to comply with that, and eventually that recycled content will be 40%. So if you would have passed the 25% in your ordinance, you would have been way ahead of the game. You're already ahead of the game doing 4.0, and we greatly appreciate that. So we're here just to say we definitely support your amendment, and we hope you pass it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the public wishing to address us on this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and return it to council for additional discussion. Councilmember Montesino?
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation with no exception to on 6.-7.102D, no exception to charge customers, so everyone pay the same. Also, a report back within a year, and increase outreach with Kids Day, but also some outreach at the stores, and also working with Save Our Shores to get some of those signs at the at our shopping centers, so people are getting reminded of to get them out of their cars, because sometimes they're just in the cars. I know that's happened to me a lot. Hopefully I can get a second by someone.
Is there a second on Councilmember Montesino's motion?
I'll second it for discussion purposes. And in that discussion, I would ask Councilmember Montesino how we're going to be consistent with the county, and by pulling this language out, that kind of creates this difference with other agencies, and I'm not sure if that's going to confuse the residents and the customers, and they're going to say, well, and county takes a different view on this. And so how do you rectify the actual mechanism? And I would ask that to staff too, you know, how will this proposed change fly overall with the confusion with other agencies?
And I also have some concern that the agenda in a proposed ordinance is one thing, so if we're going to change it now.
I'll remove my second in that case.
Can you clarify that, Alan?
Everybody pays equitably.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Councilmember Hernandez?
I do have a question. I think it might be an Alan question as well. So when we originally introduced it, we did have the 25% recyclable material, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can still amend that to keep that, since it was part of our introduction?
You can amend it if it's not, if you don't consider it material, and if you gave notice to the public and believe that you attracted all the public that would be interested in the ordinance here. If you've done that, then you do not need to come back a second time.
But when it was introduced, we did have the 25% recyclable plastic, right?
Yes, it was. And then the second reading of that ordinance was pulled, and this is a new introduction, and it does not include the 25%.
So then we
content.
wouldn't be able to add it right now, or would we?
Well, there's a motion on the floor. And in order to introduce a different amendment to that, we first have to vote on the motion that's on the floor.
It hasn't been
We need a second.
Yeah, because he put it second.
Okay.
So,
So is there a second on Councilmember Montesino's motion?
I just have a question on that. The motion is the same as what's in here. We do the review and everybody is charged the fee. That's the correct, that's a provision on what you have here? Thank you. And that brings me to the question on the fee part of things. I know that legislative-wise, we're looking at this being developed state. Is there any information with regarding the state and the requirement for the cost or of those that have to pay or those that would be waived from paying the fee?
I'm not enough familiar with it.
If we're allowing certain people that have a WIC or the other services based on their income levels to be waived from the fee, do we know that that may be something that's incorporated at the state level in terms of the mandate? Because if we're saying everybody's going to be equal and the state comes along and has the exclusions on it, I don't know, mixing and matching.
I did review the state ordinance, and right now I'm not recalling that one element of it, of whether or not they waive it for the public assistance customers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Illicich?
I just want to remind everybody that plastic is the issue. That's how we got here, plastic. And I think that we see plastic and we believe that it's not good for our environment. And I think we've been convinced that plastic bags are not good, period. Then we have government, us, coming in and saying, you know what? You can't have biodegradable paper either. And we're going to charge you 25 cents every time you use a paper bag. Well, paper is environmentally friendly. And I think there should be no charge for paper bags, period. So I don't know how we're going to fix this, but I don't think I will support it because plastic is the issue. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. But I think by sorting out certain people get free bags and other people don't, I think that causes problems in the stores. When you see some people get bags and others don't, I'm with Councilmember Montesino on the fact that I think it should be equitable across the board, but I think it should be free for everybody. Thank you.
So there was not a second on the motion. So I'm going to go ahead and move staff recommendations. And we have the language before us, which includes a couple of amendments. Is there a second for staff's recommendation?
I would ask for a friendly amendment to just have it reviewed in a year's time.
Great.
To second that, if you would approve putting that in there.
Yes. So there's been a second by Councilmember Kaufman Gomez. Discussion on the motion. So I'll go ahead and clarify a few points. So the issue about we're not exempting anybody from payment in this particular ordinance. That was already in our existing ordinance, and it was to reflect the language that is present in the other ordinances. And that's language that has stood up to challenges by other organizations. So it's language that has stood up. And so again, it corresponds with existing ordinances. It was already in existence for ours. The only amendment that we're making is clarifying what kind of bag the grocer has to provide to those that are exempt from the 25-cent fee. Before, it included any bag. It included a single-use carry-out bag. And so for our purposes, if the purpose was to reduce single-use carry-out bags, then we wanted to clarify that instead the grocer should be providing a paper bag, as well as having the option of provide no fee for the reusable bag. So that's the clarification around that. So we're not exempting anybody from payment that wasn't already receiving that exemption in our existing ordinance. The other issue as well had to do with why the removal of the 25% post-consumer recycled content. And the reason for that is that we did, want to address some concerns because again, this is just a encouraged practice for grocers in the area. It's not required that they have to provide a reusable bag for sale to consumers. The only requirement in our existing ordinance is that if they provide a bag for sale, it has to be a paper bag and they have to charge 25 cents for that fee. But one of the concerns from the grocers was that if they choose to provide a reusable bag for sale, they want to be able to access vendors and that there's a standard in the industry if they choose to provide those reusable bags. So that's the reason why we, redefined reusable bag to include woven cloth or plastic material that is 4 milliliters thick. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I do have one more question because there was a comment about the bags that are approved and you had brought an example of one and it was 69 cents or something like that in terms of the cost factor. Is that one that gave us an example in terms of the post-consumer product, anything recyclable that it's indicated on that bag at a reasonable price if they were to sell it?
Made in China.
Yeah, China,
This
yes.
one does not indicate that it has
Okay.
post-consumer recycled content. Now, the city's bag that we were giving out at Earth Day and using for education has 80% post-consumer recycled material. And this bag, when we bought about 5,000 of them, cost $1.05 in that range. And so, if it was purchased in much greater quantities, the price would come down a bit. But this is 80%, and it says it's made from water bottles. So, and it stands up and so on. So, pretty nice bag.
Thank you. And when something does come with the state with regarding what's being trickled down in terms of the state level of ordinance, can we make sure that we get that updated and see how it lines up with what we're doing here?
Well, yes, and I know that our ordinance would be grandfathered so it wouldn't affect us if the state passes one.
If we're more restrictive than the state?
Correct.
Thank you.
But like any ordinance, you can bring it back as a council member if you would prefer those standards and/or. Vice Mayor Hernandez?
I'm fine with the cloth one as well. I'm just saying that if the option is also the plastic one, that it probably should be recyclable material or recyclable plastic. Was that still an option though? Alan?
Yes, I think you could do that.
Sorry.
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Can I
doesn't include
clarify?
that.
Can
Yeah.
I clarify something?
Same option as before? Are you asking, or I'm a little confused which option you're talking about now? Councilmember Montesinos?
The same one I asked before.
Okay, is that the same as
was
Councilmember
a motion.
Montesinos?
No.
No.
So we need to, if you could clarify these options. Are both of them changing the content of the bag?
It is, no, the initial introduction that we did of the 25% reading, correct?
Yes.
But that also included and/or cloth material, right? It didn't exclude cloth.
And that's still in the current
Okay, that's what
one.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
But
fine.
the current proposal does not include 25% recycled content requirement for the plastic.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the amendment I would like to make, though.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yes, I happen to sit on the Solid Waste Task Force along with other city representatives from other cities in the county and the county folks themselves. And I just think it's important for us to be consistent area-wide so that that minimizes confusion among the public and it provides actually better service to the residents. And so while I philosophically agree with Member Montesino and actually, support what he is trying to say, I think it's important that we stick with our brothers and sisters at the county and the other cities in the area and help lead the way for the state as well. What I would like to see is a little more signage and then probably nobody wants to see any more signage, but a reminder, and I know you have some stickers that people can put in their car or on their windshield to don't forget your bag. And I know that the grocers and other retail establishments have some signs that could be more prominent to remind folks to use our bags. And there again, it's just a matter of habit. And so I'll be supporting the motion.
So on your question, your comment about being identical to our neighbors, I need to clarify. When our city council first passed our ordinance, we were identical to our neighbors. But since then, the county has gone back and amended theirs. And they now require the ordinance to apply to restaurants. So restaurants are no longer allowed to give out plastic bags. And the reason they did that was that there was some legal action in other jurisdictions, San Francisco, Marin, and the plastic bag industry lost. And so the county felt confident to go ahead and make that change. So right now, on all other aspects, ours is identical to our neighbors, with the exception of the county applying this ordinance to restaurants. So there is a difference.
I know everybody likes consistency, but I like to be the leader on it. And you're never gonna have any all consistency together, like we just said. The original intent, I think, was to do the restaurant, but there was litigation, and that's why most of the jurisdictions in 2012 or something or around there opted to not put the restaurants in the original ordinance. So because I was aware of those conversations, and what you can do is send the mayor with a message to the mayor's committee and say, we're doing this in Watsonville. You need to be consistent with us, not follow just regular consistency. For consistency's sake. Nobody bought my motion, so I'll be in support of this original one.
Well, to really just clarify, we will be changing not only the whole situation with regarding the restaurants, but we are being more restrictive because we are now requiring a thicker bag than the rest of the counties requiring now, correct?
Yes and no. We did not put the restaurant change in our amendments.
Right, so we know that that's a difference.
We would be the first with the 4 mil thickness. We'd be the ones that would be putting an end to this proliferation of the new and improved single-use bag.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion?
Let me just say it's the right thing to do, and we are making progress, and hopefully others will follow as well.
Councilmember Bilicic.
Well, then I'll say once again, plastic is the issue. I agree with the plastic. But I think we as an agency, government, I think we're going overboard. We have paper bags that are biodegradable, and I will not be supporting this motion. I think they should be free when you go to the store. Thank you.
Seeing no additional discussion, there's a motion on the floor to accept staff's recommendation with the friendly amendment that we revisit and review the policy after a year. And so the motion has been made by myself and a second by Councilmember Kaufman Gomez. Can we go ahead and have a roll call vote, please?
Felicic?
No.
Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes.
Montesino?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Yes. Motion carries.
Can I just ask a question? But even though it wasn't an ordinance, are you still going to do the outreach and working with Save Our Shores? Thank you.
Yes.
So we can bring this back in a year, and if there's any changes, we can adapt to those and also do the higher content of post-recyclable material?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all. And now moving on to our new business. This is the item agenda to discuss consulting services to update the Watsonville Downtown Master Plan and potential guidelines for the segment of Main Street between Riverside Drive and Beach Street. And we do have a staff report on this issue.
Thank you, Mayor Cervantes, members of the council and the community. I'm Keith Boyle, along with Kurt Overmeyer and Marcella Tavances from the Community Development Department, here to discuss the potential update of the Downtown Master Plan and getting a contract to get somebody to help us move along with that project. The study area that we're going to be looking at for this amendment is between Riverside and Beach Street, and we will be focusing on Central Avenue, basically to Beach Street, as you see on this diagram. BFS Landscape Architecture was the people who prepared the original downtown plan in 1990, and they've worked with us on multiple projects, the park in Franich, Callahan, variety of other small pocket parks. So we're very familiar with them, and they're familiar with us. We've worked with them. They're a good group and are very responsive to the things that we work with them on. The Downtown Task Force has been working on this project for the last 8 months and talking about different concepts that we would be considering in an update of the plan. A community workshop was conducted in November, and a lot of the preliminary concepts that were raised by the task force were vetted at this community workshop, including bulb outs, additional parking, outdoor dining, a variety of other things, which had a lot of support. So we wanted to move forward with a more formal concept to bring to the city council, and BFS is intended to work with us as part of that process. The goals of the improvement are to help revitalize downtown and bring some new energy to that area. We want to help create a new pedestrian-friendly environment, create some additional landscaping features that enhance the downtown, creating some more outdoor activity areas, dining, sitting areas for new artwork, and providing some additional on-street parking, and additionally looking at reducing speeds to encourage more shopping. The task force has met between 8 and 12 months to come up with the ideas that have been discussed and will be forwarded to BFS. One of the primary things that we're looking at is reducing the number of lanes from 4 lanes currently to 2 lanes with a turn lane, and that is only in this area that is currently under city control between Riverside and Beach Street. The task force has done a number of field trips to go out and look at what other jurisdictions have done. Some successful areas, including Gilroy and Morgan Hill, were looked at, and also Livermore was presented during part of the process. And I'll let Kurt Overmeyer continue from this point.
Thank you, Keith. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the improvements that we saw when we were on our field trips. The two pictures that you see right now are from Morgan Hill, and you can see that they've added, and hopefully everyone can see the mouse pointer, some outdoor dining, and they also made it easier for pedestrians to cross the street by narrowing the distance that the pedestrians had to cross by providing an island in the middle that their downtown has a median, but they provided an island in the middle that allowed pedestrians to wait for cars going in the other direction, and then again narrowed that distance between those two areas. In Gilroy, they went from a really similar situation to us where they had a 4-lane road, which they replaced with beautiful landscaping, lots of trees, again moving the edge of that crosswalk closer to the center of the street so that you don't have to walk quite as far. And what that did was it spurred a lot of private investment. And the other picture that you'll see here is this property where the business inside of it is a wine and tapas bar. And they took the building, they moved the front wall and the front door back and created this sort of indoor-outdoor area where people can sit and enjoy the beautiful weather and still be protected from the elements. Livermore did a much more extensive update, and they again were a 4-lane road that was brought down to 2 lanes. And you can see that there's some common threads along here, but Livermore's done a few more things. Number one is they converted some of their parking spaces on a temporary and somewhat ad hoc basis into outdoor dining. And we call this idea a parklet, because it's a parking space that can be used for other uses just than storing vehicles. They added a lot of street trees. They changed the whole design of their roadway. You'll also see that they have lighting that is at more of a pedestrian scale than the lighting that we have in our downtown. This next example is our downtown, where you can see we've done a lot of these things, but we never had the opportunity to take a look at our downtown, envisioning not having Highway 156 in place. And this opportunity that we have to maybe in the future relinquish Highway 156 back to the city, but also, I'm sorry, 152, I don't know why I had that messed up in my head, but also to take the area where we control the right-of-way and take a look at some of these ideas that have worked so well in other cities. So this is a diagram that we got from a streetscape design guide. And you'll see this looks an awful lot like downtown Watsonville. There's 4 lanes. The parking's a little bit different because we have some angle parking and some parallel parking. But everything else is pretty similar. Note the long distance between how far pedestrians have to cross the road. The scale of the lighting is designed for automobiles and not for pedestrians. There's little opportunity for outdoor dining, little opportunity for people to enjoy the outdoor space. And you'll also notice that a lot of these storefronts don't seem to interact very well with the street in front of them. And this is an after example of that same roadway, and it's just sort of kind of a high-level idea, throwing out all the good ideas that are there. And we probably won't do all of this, but you'll see that some of the space has been converted to a bike lane. The area, the stop line for the cars is moved back from the crosswalks, making it safer for pedestrians. There's outdoor dining, and again, in a way that allows a parking space to be retasked for outdoor dining or for some other use. So landscaped bulb outs. The crosswalks are closer together. So what we're going to do in this process is envision all of these potential, or look at all of these potential ideas, see which ones fit best in the area that we're talking about, see how we can manage the change in lane configuration, and figure out what's going to work best in our downtown. So the economics of this, we over the course of this effort have been able to talk to a lot of cities all over the United States and even Toronto and Ontario, where they've taken efforts like this on. And what has been seen in those other cities almost universally is that the adjacent uses saw an increase in sales, that the restaurants are able to add seats for a lower free cost by having that outdoor dining available to them, and that results in increased sales. The activity on the street increases. And street activity, the more street activity is, there's an inverse correlation with crime, because the more eyes there are in the street, the less likely that criminals are going to be able to take advantage of an area. One city that I spoke with just recently, Urbana, Illinois, saw a 250% increase in their restaurant sales in adjacent properties when they did a similar thing to what we're talking about for just one block in Urbana. Chicago's Hyde Street neighborhood saw a substantial increase in the retail rents because the demand for spaces for retailers in that area went up enormously. And as it turns out, the sales also followed those rents. The sales went up, the rents went up. So that's it for our, the contract that we've prepared with BFS will be $19,000 to prepare a conceptual street plan for its first section of Main Street improvements. Contract starts on March 17th. The workshop, we'll have a workshop in late spring, and would expect the consultant to be able to provide us with conceptual designs sometime in the early summer. And that's all of our presentation for now, and with that, we'd be very happy to entertain any questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you for your presentation. Councilmember Montesino has some questions.
What's the, can you go back to the slide before then?
Oh, wrong way, sorry. One more.
What's the first section of Main Street improvement?
So what we're talking about is coming up with designs for, sorry, it's going a little bit slow, for the area between Riverside and Beach, but primarily for the area between Central and Beach.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst?
Thank you, Mayor. The staff report mentions significant progress in the early 90s. Can you elaborate on that? And not everybody is going to remember the early 90s, but there might be something to learn from it.
Sure. The original downtown master plan was created after the earthquake, and that gave you a lot of what you currently have. You have the light fixtures, you have the sidewalks that have the brick in them, you have the landscaping, the grates. All of that was part of the downtown master plan and guidelines. And it had signage, it had a variety of things that have actually been implemented and have been successful. This concept would take that downtown master plan and add additional elements to it. So that's the concept.
And in 2008, we updated that plan, and all of the Tier 1 improvements, the high priority improvements, have also taken place, where we've replaced the luminaires and those same lights with LED lights. We fixed all of the underground infrastructure, making it much easier for us to maintain and manage the electrical system and other systems that are underground in that area. And you'll notice we have beautiful new banners up on our light poles, and that was also part of those first phase recommendations.
Thank you very much. You know, some people forget about all those improvements that have been made, and they get taken for granted when we don't reflect upon them. So thank you.
Councilmember Bilicic?
First of all, I have to commend you on the improvement, commend the city on the improvements that have taken place. I think the lights have enhanced, the banners have enhanced the streets, the bricks, landscaping, different things that I think have upgraded Main Street. And I think a lot of people are very pleased with what they see. In fact, the additional lights that have come have been good. It looks really nice. But our city is continuing to grow, and coming over that Pajaro Bridge, there are a lot of cars coming in, and they go right down Main Street. So are these cars now going to go down Rodriguez Street or Union? I mean, you're going to put them into residential areas? Where are these cars going to go?
Well, I think our research at this point shows that most of those cars, most of that traffic is not local traffic. It's traffic that is commuters from other areas going through Watsonville to other areas. So that traffic, the eastbound traffic that's coming from Pajaro into Watsonville will probably, or at least we imagine that a lot of those people will, because of these changes, choose a different route, and that'll probably be the brand new Salinas Road interchange. And then in terms of the westbound traffic, there are several other routes that have extensive roadways and the ability to carry the traffic capacity. But part of this effort will be a traffic study that will help us and understand that a little bit better.
Also, just to understand, there was a downtown road diet plan that was done when we first looked at doing the relinquishment of Highway 152, and that's been prepared. So there is a background study that the Bellinger Foster has Ron Marquez as a subconsultant to look at that road diet plan and come up with mitigations to make sure that this is not going to create significant traffic issues as we start forward. So when it comes, we're not ready to answer all the questions, traffic questions tonight. That's what the study is intended to do. We're asking for a contract to begin the process and to begin studying that road traffic diet that we already have. Maria Esther Rodriguez is here. She can answer some questions, but we don't really want to get into the detail of it because we're not prepared to do that tonight.
Well, although you don't want to get into the detail, the summary of the report right there says that the reduced capacity along Main Street will cause several intersections to operate at unacceptable levels. It's right there in the report.
That was a summary of the road diet plan that we just submitted to you at a request of Trina Kaufman Gomez. So we want to let you know that we do have a study, that we will be talking about it as we go forward with the contract. But at this stage, we're not ready to discuss the traffic impacts in detail until we've actually have the contract, we've had the studies, and we have recommendations. So we're not ready to present those at tonight's meeting.
And the funding that you're asking for is out of general fund?
This is program income from previous HUD programs that we have. So it's not general fund, it's previous federal funds that have recirculated and now can be used for this purpose.
How much is in that account?
$500,000.
You know, successful downtowns, if whether we like Santa Cruz or not. Santa Cruz is a one-lane road, one direction, half of Pacific, one direction, the other half. People don't use Pacific Garden Mall with a vehicle unless they have to. But it is a pedestrian-friendly environment, or it was designed as a pedestrian-friendly environment. The majority of the trips that we're seeing, especially on this lower part of Maine, are not originating in Watsonville. They're truly going through Watsonville. And because it's faster than taking 129 off of 1 and just going Riverside Drive, or taking Salinas Road and going Salinas Road. So if we start looking at the origin and final destination of these trips, they're using Watsonville as a through lane. And we think, because it's at 5 o'clock.
And as you know, it used to be the only road.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody
And
used it. It was a 4-lane highway.
Yeah, and it was safe because Salinas Road was a terrible interchange, but now it's safe.
No, I'm talking before that.
Yeah.
You know, that's how they went through, how you got to Castroville or how you got to Santa Cruz. You had to go down Main Street. It was 4 lanes.
But what makes it obvious that it's not originating in Watsonville is that there's a rush hour.
Mm-hmm.
If it was all originating in Watsonville, it would be a steady daytime thing. But when you have peak hours like that, it's obviously going through your town. Because it's not when school gets out, it's not when every job gets out in town. So where does that rush hour coming from? So we think the traffic will analyze this further. You will have plenty of opportunity to see this again. Approving this contract does not mean that the improvements will happen. It will come back here after a community workshop and going through the downtown task force. So we'll have a chance to look at the improvements. There will still be a couple more opportunities, one to put it out to bid, one to award the bid. So this is a not very expensive way to look at what we could do with our downtown with minimal investment to spur economic development and bring more pedestrians and more bicycles in a safer way to downtown.
I feel like a vote of a yes vote on this is where we're going to explore the options is very similar to what's happened to 152. Because everyone talks about 152 and says, oh, it's a done deal. They're going to change this. They're going to change that. It's already done. And the people have a very different idea, even though it hasn't come to council. The letters have gone to the state. I mean, there's been all kinds of stuff with 152. This, again, is here we go with Main Street. Well, we're just going to do this little piece. I mean, since this has been on the agenda, I've had several phone calls from people saying, what are they doing to Main Street? What's going to happen to the traffic? Why would we do this? And then we say, well, you know, business. We want people to come downtown. We want businesses. What businesses have you had that have said, we support this? Do you have a list of businesses? Or can you get that to me?
Not so much businesses, but the lion's share of the property owners that are engaged in our downtown task force, the biggest stakeholder in our downtown are the people that own those properties, are all universally in favor of this.
So you can get me a list of that?
Absolutely, if you'd like.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a list. They've signed and they've said they agree with this. They support it. Is that right?
Well, I haven't asked them to sign anything, but they have all verbally indicated support for this.
Well, I'll trust you. I mean, I'd just like to see a list of the people that you have that have supported this, because the community is very mixed. And, you know, part of that is the fear of the unknown, change, you're not sure. And so much has been said about 152. Oh, we're going to take over 152, on and on and on. This is just one part of it. I don't know. I just have some reservations, and I would like to see more data from the people that do support this. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hernandez?
I don't have questions, but I do have some comments with this in pertaining to the study. I want to know if the study's going to be congruent with whatever revitalization we do in the future north of Beach Street, and so it remains, you know, fluid in a sense, since they're going to be done at different times. And if the impact report is going to take a look at some of the traffic impacts that's going to be happening on Rodriguez, Walker, and any improvements we might need for, you know, to make it more walkable and safe as well, because there'll be more traffic, but there is schools there. There is neighborhoods, you know, that people walk every day on Rodriguez, and it's already kind of unsafe there already, but if we can take a look at that. And would it allow us also a welcome sign near the Pajaro Bridge, the bridge over the Pajaro River? Would it actually allow us a welcome sign? Kind of like Castroville's, welcome to Castroville, artichoke capital, maybe, but we'll be the strawberry capital, I think.
Right, yeah, this is intended to be the first step on a bigger project. And the study that has already been done for the road diet plan does give a variety of suggestions for mitigating traffic. So that will be analyzed. We will present that as a full package when it comes back to the task force and to the council to summarize what we identify as those specific issues that we need to address to make sure that it moves forward in a positive direction.
So we are keeping the walkable and
yes,
bicycling safety component to what we've.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
Thank you. I do have several questions regarding this, and the diet plan was interesting to know, which I asked for, was able to read up on that, which does really go through the concerns about the traffic. Initially, with the kind of money we need to be able to move forward with this in terms of a yes-no situation, but there is a lot of depth that we really need to have answered for the concerns that we're hearing here and from the community, especially the traffic situation, because it isn't just local, it isn't just people passing through that have to use those roads that are getting backed up, and the people passing through we're not going to flush them out for them to figure out their own alternative for us to relieve this issue. We have CEQA that we need to get through. We have to get through the climate action plan and how this correlates with that. I believe that the notes had that there was 2009 copy of the 2009 Main Street beautification. It would be my understanding that they will be taking off from that for this consulting services. Would that be the case?
Correct. That's the latest update of our master plan.
And we do know that our money from the HUD funds and everything that are being recirculated are for this purpose in terms of us taking a look at what is going on downtown. So this is that opportunity to take. It's not a decision-making opportunity for us to say that that's what will happen, especially in light of the concerns that I know I see here. Will they be laying out the costs for these improvements in their findings?
Yes, there is item by item. If you look at the Bellinger-Foster scope of work, it identifies costs for specific items. So that will be analyzed as part of this. Okay, and what capability of funding them with little to no economic development money? That will it be addressing or concerning with regards to creativity on where the money's going to come from? I think we have enough to go from the property that we have or that we have control of, but at that point, we drop it off. I mean, money's going to be an issue. It will be an issue. And how much of the planning has already been conducted from this consultant versus what needs to be refreshed from the planning stage from this point forward? So these are some questions that I have regarding this particular project and where they're picking it up from here and reporting back to us with.
Obviously, money is going to be an issue. We've identified a few ways that we can finance early changes and are looking at other ways to finance things out in the future. But none of that is solidified at this point.
What are some of the things you've explored?
Looking at some federal grants that could be available for this, looking at public-private partnerships and public-private joint ventures, and then the fund that Carlos just mentioned as something that we could use at the first stage. And then in terms of how this will sync with the work that we did in the past, the work that we did in the past never envisioned doing anything other than having the 4-lane highway run through the center of our downtown. So this would be an opportunity to look at that and to look at what our options would be and how that would impact other areas.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this project, that's for sure.
So any additional questions before we turn it over to public comments, public input? Councilmember Bulisich?
You're asking for a resolution tonight, but what about this traffic impact study that's already been done?
It's more of a program-wide traffic study, and it wouldn't address the very specific things that we need to address in this by actually doing some improvements. So this would be a more detailed version of that larger traffic study.
More detailed than this diet plan?
Yes.
This is pretty specific.
Well, detailed to just those improvements that we're looking at.
Well, it seems like it addresses these concerns that you have in the plan. The other concern, I went to one of your meetings and it was, what do you want to see? And somebody'd say, well, I want this company, or I want that company, or I want this company. There's a lot of things that we may want. That doesn't mean we're going to get them. And I think, there's got to be more than what would you like to see downtown.
Well, it's important.
Go ahead.
It's important to recognize that this is a visioning process, and it gives you ideas of what can occur. It's on paper. You don't make the commitment until you sign the contracts to actually go out and do the bid. So you have to be comfortable enough to move forward with a project and go through that community process. This is the beginning to vision what it is that you want downtown. And so I think I think we've heard from the Downtown Task Force that you want to see something happen to revitalize downtown, and this is a first step.
And I'd like to see the list of people first before I would support this. Just that I think there's more detail that's missing from this. But that's just me, so I'm sure you'll go forward.
And we did have come to our city council who was going to be sitting on that downtown task force. So it has been public information, public knowledge to council members and the public as well who's participating in those conversations. And one of my questions had to do with the public-private partnerships that you're discussing. In those other photos that you demonstrated for various successful downtowns, could you describe a little bit sort of, how much of the public sort of support went into that? So how much was the city financing those efforts? And then how much maybe the property owners were contributing to some of those renovations to downtown?
Sure, I don't have the exact
Not exact
details
numbers,
on any of this,
but
so,
just sort of anecdotally what was going on.
Well, I can tell you that in the case of Livermore, all of those parklet areas, and the last time I was there, they had 6. Those were all completely privately funded. So the partnership there was that the city provided the space, and the private entities funded the improvements in the parklet itself. They also built a pretty impressive black box theater in Livermore that was funded partly with redevelopment, partly with EDA funds, and partly with private funds. In the case of downtown Santa Cruz, you'll note that there are places where there are bricks on the ground that have people's names on them. They sold those bricks for $100 each and raised about $50,000 to help fund some of the improvements in their downtown. There were some similar situations that took place in Gilroy's downtown, not so much in Morgan Hill, but they're increasingly looking at that as an option.
Great, thank you. And the reason I highlight that is because, the issue of not having enough money is always brought up. But I don't ever want to underscore the excitement that was present in that meeting that was focused on visioning our downtown. There was a lot of excitement. People stayed till the very end. It wasn't just, what do you want to see? It's also where do you want to see it? People were sitting down, mapping it out. Sort of conceptualizing what would the sidewalks look like, what would the outdoor dining look like. And so I think that there is a lot of excitement to sort of see something like this move forward so that you can have another piece of the vision, the sort of physical manifestation of what it would look like if we were able to do this throughout the entire downtown. And I think that there wasn't any question that there would be impact on the traffic. But also just to sort of highlight some of the other notes that were present in the report is that a lot of these successful downtowns do require slower traffic. So again, the emphasis being on walkable communities and having sort of that pedestrian foot traffic out and about enjoying the town and the city. So before moving on to any kind of motion, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment if there's any members of the public wishing to address us.
Good afternoon. My name is Ismael Magaña. I'm a Watsonville resident. I actually studied architecture, did my thesis 2 years ago in downtown Watsonville, and did a master plan. So I spent a whole year looking at our downtown, doing surveys, going to our high schools, talking to our people, our citizens in the church, at church. I did a lot of surveys. So I spent a lot of time looking at what we have, and we have a really strong bones for the architecture and the structure in downtown. So all we need is, it's an investment, Anything that's worth it in life in general, anything that's worth it is gonna cost us. It's gonna take time, it's gonna take an investment. And my design, my ideas that I presented as well, it's not gonna be easy. We need to divert the traffic, we need to put the money where we need to close down a couple lanes and open it up to pedestrian walk, outdoor dining, all that good stuff. It's doable, but it takes time. And I understand your concerns. Where's the traffic gonna go? How are we gonna do it? What businesses are gonna come here? We need to put the image in the business minds. We need to put the actual architecture out there for them to say, Watsonville is good. They have a strong foundation that I want to invest my money there. I'm a business. I want to put my business right in the center of downtown. So that being said, we need to invest so businesses can come and look at what we have. You know, this is an open shop. It's ready for lease. Look at your beautiful landscape, beautiful hardscapes, and you're ready to come in. If we don't provide that for them, nobody's going to invest. I mean, that's common sense. Nobody's going to come and say, you know, here's my millions of dollars. I want to make millions of dollars back, but the way you have it right now, I'm not going to get anything. I'm not going to get any pedestrian walk, anything else. So just comments that this is a much necessary project. Again, we have a lot of youth in this city. We have a lot of agriculture communities that they want to invest. You know, they want to invest. They don't want to go to Salinas all the time, Santa Cruz, Gilroy. Hey, why not stay here on Sundays, walk downtown, spend my money? Why not? Why do I have to go spend my money somewhere else? So that's my concern. Like I said, I have some really good thoughts that have been incorporated, and it's just a matter of investing. Taking the time and investing, looking at the visual ambition of what's the possibilities for downtown, which is, it's just great. We have a lot of stuff that other cities don't, and it's just a matter of, like I said, investing, painting the pictures to those businesses, say, how am I gonna get my money back if I do invest? Well, you know what? Invest your money, we're gonna create a good environment for your business. So that's just my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. This is the opportunity for public input, so any members of the public wishing to address us on this particular item, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll return it to council. I know there is additional questions and discussion. So Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez, I saw your hand up earlier.
Yes, thank you. I'm hoping that we see some integration of what our general plan is within the consultants' ideas that do come to fruition in the process of this ultimately moving forward. If that were the case. I know that we have great bones. I really know that we've got that downtown, and it's definitely something that we want to incorporate and enhance, and there's a lot of functional obsolescence that comes with that. I would like to see what we can do from the business owners in terms of a commitment that can be made on their part, knowing that it's going to take them to be involved, included in the process to move this forward so that we can show the community what kind of support from down there in terms of moving this forward and a consensus and finding out in terms of what it ultimately costs, because we can wish a lot of things, but if we don't have the money for what we're wishing for, a lot of it's just on paper. So I really would like to see this move along.
Good point. Councilmember Montesino?
I'd just like to move this item. I'd like to make a
So
motion to move this item.
Councilmember Montesino is moving staff recommendation. Second by Councilmember Hernandez. Additional discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, a lot has changed in Watsonville since the 60s when the freeway didn't exist, and certainly since the earthquake changed a lot of things too. And now the Salinas Road interchange has some impact on the downtown as well. You know, I've been to the streetscape in Livermore and Morgan Hill and Santa Cruz and a number of other downtown cities that have been rejuvenated throughout the country. And I know that there's apprehension by some that, oh, if you study it, then that's scary, or that'll, you know, we don't want any change, but yet we do want change. Everybody talks about the downtown, but then when we get ready to do something, a lot of people are hesitant about it as well. So I think it's important for us to get knowledge, to study the issue, to look at some plans. I was able to drop by some of the task force meetings when the members, before they arrived, and saw the stakeholders and the property owners and heard some of the discussion. And I'm disappointed we don't have more participation here this evening, especially since there's people that are, you know, probably have questions and concerns. But as we move forward, there'll be a forum for them to express their desires, their wishes, their apprehensions, their fears, and hopefully studies will provide some answers and some plans for the future. So let's move forward here. Despite the the kind of the lack of participation at this particular venue. I know that there have been numerous opportunities for people to come and weigh in and communicate with council and staff over these issues. So I encourage them to continue to do that, or at least start to do that.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Mayor Hernandez?
No. I'm ready for roll call.
Councilmember Bilicic?
I just would reiterate that I've seen people talk about different things that they'd like to see here. But, you know, as we know, everything costs money. But I don't see any businesses here tonight saying, let's go forward. I don't know why there isn't more participation tonight. And I would like to see the list. Thank you.
Call the question, please.
So today is just the discussion of consulting services to have various renditions drafted up. Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez?
Just in commenting, I have been part of the committee that has been meeting on every single meeting and hearing from all of the information that's coming through. And we are right, we need to still have that continuous dialogue going on for this process. And this is one piece of the process, and we just need to make sure that we're really looking at it from all aspects, because it's going to take a tremendous amount of investment for a lot of the owners of the buildings that are downtown that we don't necessarily have going, that we're not seeing here, that aren't necessarily showing up for those committee meetings that we've been having out there. And I think that that's an important fact, that we're doing something, but we're not seeing the community in here on these kind of items that are being addressed at the council level. And I want to make sure that we get that word out there for them to be attending, so we can hear more than just our council and your presentation. We're hearing from community here as well.
And I think that that's part of the recommendation, as well as various opportunities for public input. This is just one, but in that public meeting that we had at the civic community rooms here in the Civic Plaza, it did include, you know, the room was full. There was a lot of participation, and I think when the focus is just on this particular item and we're able to sort of have renditions of what it's going to look like, you know, the people will come out, they'll participate, provide the input. They're doing that now. I mean, we hear it all the time. You know, what's going to go into downtown, what's happening with downtown. So this is one example of what could potentially happen in our historic downtown to revitalize it. So I think that that participation is there. And it's just about providing different forums for that participation to take place. That's really significant and important, and I think it is highlighted in the report. So we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Bilicic?
No.
Kaufman-Gomez?
Yes.
Dot? Hernandez?
Yes.
First?
Yes.
Montesino?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Yes. So motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1.
Thanks to staff.
So item 10.1, there haven't been any emergency items added to the agenda. Item 10.2 includes informational items, written reports. That includes report of disbursements as well as miscellaneous documents that are minutes to our Planning Commission meeting. So those are available in our packets and online. And now we're going to open up our joint City Council Successor Agency, former Redevelopment Agency meeting. And under that, we have our consent agenda, which is a motion approving our successor agency minutes of October 22nd, 2013. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
We could do it by consensus, so I'm doing it by ayes. Okay, so it carries with the 4 of us that are up here. And we'll go ahead and move to our new business. Item 8.2 is the reinstatement of city loans made to former redevelopment agency, and we have a staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and the audience. Tonight is actually the first real positive move that I'm happy to be able to announce in our dissolution process of our former redevelopment agency. And the recommendation tonight is that the City Council and the successor agency adopt resolutions authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement regarding reinstatement of loans on behalf of the city and the successor agency, which will become effective immediately, finding action taken by our oversight board that these loans were originally made for redevelopment purposes. And now I'll give you a little background. Basically, when redevelopment agencies were dissolved, the legislation, the Dissolution Act, which is compiled really of two pieces of legislation, ABX 126 and AB 1484, stated that any old loans made between the city and the former redevelopment agency were not eligible to be repaid until after the Department of Finance issued a finding of completion. And basically, the Department of Finance was mandated to issue the finding of completion after all funds that were due under the due diligence reviews of both the old 80% general redevelopment funds and their housing funds were paid and distributed to the taxing agencies, and any monies due in the true-up payments for the first ROPS had been made. There was legislation included in this that was called clawbacks. If agencies, this legislation actually was adopted in June of 2011, but and redevelopment agencies weren't dissolved after state litigation with the state until February 1st of 2012. So in that time period, the legislation had a clawback provision that said that if redevelopment agencies actually made payments on old city agency loans after January 1st of 2011, which is even before the legislation became effective that called for the dissolution of agencies, up through February 1st of 2012, they were subject to clawback. They had to be repaid until this finding of completion was issued, with certain exceptions. So there has been many differing interpretations of this legislation and what these exceptions were that were included in the legislation. So much so that over 150 lawsuits have been filed in the state on this issue. We had filed two cases. One was the one on our first true-ups, and if you may recall, that was due to a miscoding of what the funding source was for the enforceable obligations we had in our very first recognized obligation payment schedule, when we were told by the county auditor controller to say everything was from fund balance rather than redevelopment property tax trust fund, because that didn't even exist until February 1st. And we were successful in that litigation. We had a second litigation filed that centered more on the clawback provisions and what we believed were legitimate exceptions to that. We've had an initial adverse outcome in that issue, and as a result, we paid the $4.6 million under protest while preserving all our legal rights, and which earlier tonight we've reported out that you've authorized us to appeal. But our finding of completion then was made immediately, almost after we made that payment. It was issued on February 21st of 2014, and now we can reinstate our old city agency loans and actually get money from what used to be redevelopment tax increment to repay the city. So that's our positive report. There are conditions subject on the repayment, and they're listed on this chart. So we can, obviously, the Department of Finance conditions everything. One interesting point is how the interest rates to be calculated. And we anticipate there's going to be future litigation on that, but what the Department of Finance is giving direction to is you have to recalculate the loans back from the date they were originally made at LAIF as of the date the Oversight Board finds them eligible for restatement. So that means finance has had to go back through, and if we had loans, old loans that had interest earning at LAIF at that time, LAIF was considerably higher. That was the interest rate we made on our investment funds. Obviously higher than it is today. We had to recalculate those amounts as if it were a much reduced interest rate, which then any overages and payments had to be applied against that principal. So that's why you'll see a difference on some of what our original principal amounts were and what the outstanding balance is on another chart. And then obviously some payments have been made on some of these payments that were made prior to that clawback provision that have been included. There also is a maximum annual repayment calculation that the legislation has required. And in our case, for fiscal year 2014-15, that maximum repayment amount is $470,124. That amount is based on a formula of 50% of the increase in the money that used to be tax increment that the agency would have received that is no longer needed to pay enforceable obligations. So that's going to go up each year, we anticipate, because what property values will increase, so what we could have received had the agency still existed will increase, and our obligations will be reducing. So it's a difference, it's a 50% of the increase in that residual amount. So right now it's $470,124 is the most we can get against these loans, but each year that will go up. So that's why it's difficult to say exactly how long it's going to take us to repay these amounts. We can't project how much the growth in property assessed valuations are going to be, et cetera. But we believe they will all be repaid no later than 10 years from now, and it could be anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And this chart is actually a list of 7 specific loans that were old city agency loans dating back as far as 1999 that are to be repaid. And by taking this action tonight and reinstating these loans, we will be eligible to receive $6,213,000 in repayment plus LAIF going forward. So again, our recommendation, and we consider these housekeeping resolutions, but is to adopt these resolutions authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement regarding the reinstatement of loans, and then we'll be forwarding it to our oversight board so that they will find the loans were originally made for legitimate redevelopment purposes. And that completes my report tonight. We'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions from council members? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
There's a lot of detail that is really hard to disseminate, even questions to come out of it so that we get clarity with regarding the way the state is having us money back and shuffling and redoing it. The state has determined the reimbursements amount for each of these projects. Is that what's going on here? Do they match up with, I mean, the state has allowed us to go ahead and receive funds of 1.1 on the first project line, for example. I just want to...
On the first project line, so I'm assuming you're going back to the chart, the original principal amount of the library project loan for the Civic Center Library was $1.1 million. And we've recalculated that outstanding balance as $1.1 million. There was no LAIF, there were no payments, since that was part of the $4.6 million that we had to repay. But they've said when they demanded it that these loans are eligible for reinstatement after you get your finding of completion. But we have to then go through this, reinstate it, and have the oversight boards find that it was originally made for a legitimate redevelopment purpose. The state is going to look at this agreement, and it has the recalculated amounts, and they'll be looking at all of our recalculations to make sure that we've done it the way they want us to do it. But we've followed Finance's direction, and that's how, or the State Department of Finance's direction, and that's where we've come up with what the recalculated amount is. Once you're done, once you take action, it'll go to the Oversight Board, and the Oversight Board's action will be forwarded to the state.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, I'll open this up for public input. Any members of the audience wishing to address us on this particular agenda item? Seeing none, we'll return it to City Council for additional discussion. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I'll place the motion so that we can move this forward so that we can start seeing this recalculate and get some funds back.
So your motion includes both items E and F?
That would be correct.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion?
I can second that.
Councilmember Hurst was loudest, so we'll have him as the second.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Motion on the floor, any discussion? Councilmember Hurst.
You know, this has been a real long and drawn-out and extremely complicated and tedious thing, but I think everybody of good conscience should really strongly object to how the state has clawed back, and maybe you can call it blackmail, or it looks like shakedown and smells like extortion. You know, it's a way for the state to hustle out the money out of the city, and I think everybody of good conscience should ought to resent the concept of this retroactive enforcement and this demand and retroactivity, and you know, it's just created a gold mine for attorneys in Sacramento. That's the end of my comment. I see heads nodding, though.
Not sleeping, right?
Right. Any other comments?
I think we just should move forward with this so we can get some of the smaller projects I know that we have on the burner moving forward as well.
So roll call vote, please.
Yelsich.
I'm going to abstain on this.
An abstention is a yes.
No.
Kaufman Gomez.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Hurst.
Yes.
Montesino. Oh, Cervantes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-1. And thank you so very much. And it was great to see you back in our chambers.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting for this evening.